And welcome everyone to the February chapter meeting of our Motor City ISSA chapter. Our agenda today is as follows. I will introduce the board members or our board members. Then we will talk about any chapter business we need to do. And the third is the speaker introductions. Fourth is going to be open discussion centered around the presentation. So it's like a combination mode. And the fifth is networking, though it's virtual. Okay, for example, Viraj, I'll say hello to you by camera. Okay, so please welcome our board. I'm Arun D'Souza. We have Marcia Mangold, our treasurer, Anida Metaj, our employment director, Matt Shalal, our secretary and webmaster, and Mike Belatsis, who is on a plane somewhere because he's delayed, is our vice president. Rajesh Nanwani is our sponsorship director. And well, Matt Shalal is secretary. He's in two places. So I should pay more attention. Okay. So for any sponsors, we have three levels of sponsorship: bronze, silver, and gold. And if there's any, vendors in the audience, you want to sponsor an event, friends who want to contact Matt or me or any board member, and we will be happy to work with you. Okay, Matt, would you like to add anything?
No, that's all. Just you can email
Okay.
sponsor at Motor City ISSA, or you can reach out to any one of us. All our emails are listed on the homepage of motorcityissa.com.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, so as my British friends would say, let's get down to brass tacks. So today we're going to talk about cybersecurity and the AI paradox. So this presentation is sort of in two parts. One is here, as I say, I'm going to set the stage and we go a few slides, talk about what it all means at a higher level. And the second part was to be the fireside chat I was to do with Mike Belatsis, but we'll do the similar format, which you'll see in a few minutes, okay? So please bear with me. Okay, so you must be wondering, what is the cybersecurity and AI paradox? We know that AI is the most powerful tool for defending enterprise infrastructure. And as a matter of fact, it's one of the macro disruptors that we see in the digital era now, in the fourth industrial revolution, along with things like cloud and quantum that's coming and so many other things. Conversely, however, it's also the most potent and powerful force for attacking infrastructure. Okay. And that's because AI accelerates threats faster than traditional security can adapt. Okay. So, as far as that goes, what are some of the core elements of the paradox? There's three of them. First is asymmetry, the second is visibility versus control, and the third is the speed gap. So, let's talk about each of them in turn. Asymmetry is sort of the situation where attackers only need one success, while defenders like us, we must secure everything. And AI, as noted earlier, puts immense power in the hands of attackers as well. They can find that single vulnerability much easier. Uh, Pillar number two is visibility versus control. Now, AI enables the business, it drives innovation, it drives companies forward, but it also creates a bunch of security risks, such as shadow AI deployments, and therefore the need for new advanced protection. And the speed gap, which I think I mentioned earlier, is a little bit of deep dive. AI accelerates code generation and system deployment, yet security and compliance testing often remain manual, leaving vulnerabilities. In fact, many companies may not have even an AI policy deployed, and certainly not an AI deployment lifecycle. It reminds me of the time during the mobile web development era, wherein people used to just, develop things fast, put it out there, there'd be breaches and risks. And we haven't learned our lesson as an industry, I guess, because we're still doing it with AI to some extent. But the problem is AI is so much more powerful. It's even more important that governance is in play. Okay. So the key message that I have here is how do you actually address this paradox? Okay. The first thing is you have to build security in through design of AI systems right from the beginning, security and privacy by design, because if we don't do that, there's going to be risks. And then the second key message I have for you at this point is to treat workforce trust management as a foundational component, not an afterthought. And later on in the presentation, we're going to go through some sort of tips and best practices to actually foster workforce trust management. Now, key themes for navigating the paradox, right? Uh, you see them listed here. The first is threats and defense. So the thing is, how will we detect and respond to AI-driven attacks such as deepfakes, automated hacking, accelerated phishing, or malware, which is very sophisticated, which are faster and more advanced than current defenses. Okay. Second, data security and privacy, because a heart of AI is data, right? So one needs to take into account, will sensitive company or customer data be used to train the AI models? And then how can we prevent data poisoning or algorithmic manipulation? The third is governance and ethics, and I touched upon it a slide or two ago. It's very, very, very important, right? Both governance, both ethics, because are there policies defining human oversight over AI decision making to avoid false positives, bias, and compliance failures? That's a really key element that we need to think about and a key question to answer. As far as third party risks go, have external AI providers been properly vetted for security, and can they guarantee uh, data privacy, or at least the state of the art controls? And budgeting and strategy, right? Just because AI has become so important now uh, for defenders to combat attackers, a lot of AI toolings and platforms will be put in place. So, therefore, are we prepared as an industry to reallocate significant IT budget, almost 20%, to maintain a secure posture against automated threats? And lastly, the key question about talent and training is how can we ensure that the workforce is trained to manage hybrid human AI teams? Okay. Okay. So now a deeper dive into each of these themes. So, as far as threats and defense go, to counter the speed and sophistication of AI driven threats, the security industry is shifting away from human speed manual responses, which cannot keep pace with the AI, towards autonomous defense, right? Humans take minutes, hours to react, but we cannot react in milliseconds. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is we need to use good AI to combat bad AI. All right. So what does that all mean? So there are some number of pillars. First, we need to shift from signatures to behavior, right? Because traditional antivirus, it looks at the known bad files that are signatures, but that's a point in time stuff, right? But with AI adapting so fast, that's not good enough because AI-driven malware changes its own code to, avoid this, right? AI systems therefore learn the normal behavior of a network or user, and then if user behavior significantly deviates from the normal, AI detects the pattern of an attack, and then based on the level of observability and process framework put in, it may even stop the attack. Okay. Now, the third thing is, second thing, I'm sorry, is deepfake authentication, right? So the thing is, we've heard these stories about where, in one instance, a CEO's video was made, and a big amount of payment was made because accounts payable believed it, right? There's this so authentic sounding emails and everything. So what do I mean by deepfake authentication? I'm talking now about zero trust for media, right? Because as deepfakes become indistinguishable from reality, we are having to move to provenance-based security. And I never thought I'd be using that term of provenance in tech terms, but for those of you who like art, you know that if you're buying an expensive painting, you have to check the provenance of it, where did it start, where has it been, has it been faked out, all that stuff. So we got to do the same for media now, right? And tech companies are here, are implementing protocols like the give me a second, Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity, also known as C2PA, that can digitally watermark media to assure that it originated from a camera and not a generator. Okay. And then for voice or video calls, defense systems look for artifacts invisible to us humans, right? Such as inconsistent blood flow patterns in a face, which is called photoplethysmography, or unnatural background noise frequencies. And third, so this is a term that we've, of course, heard in the past, but then why is it even more important now? Because in an AI-driven attack, waiting for a human analyst to click block is far too slow because the pace of attack is so huge, right? Now, SOAR can be used to automatically quarantine or isolate network threats in milliseconds, right? And advanced systems can also automatically roll back files to backup state the moment ransomware activity is detected. So therefore, its AI can make SOAR an agent of self-healing, okay, which is really a big thing. But we've always talked about the fact of people, process, technology. So far I've talked about process and technology. Now let's talk about people. Human is the last line, right? Because attackers are combating threats that exploit human psychology, right? For example, they'll go to your Twitter account and see a dog's name, and they'll use that to try to guess your password, or to get a low complexity multi-factor like a text message or things of that nature, security question and answer, where that's used very often. So what we as an industry need to do is move away from passwords towards pass keys and hardware security keys like UV keys, for example, that AI cannot guess or trick out of a person. Okay. Then also to combat the spoofing of humans, like the CEO video I talked about, we have to use verbal out-of-band verification, where any urgent financial request must be confirmed with a secondary pre-agreed upon method. So in closing about the slide, there is a term called Red Queen's race. That's a biological concept where predator and prey both must constantly evolve just to stay in the same place. So as AI makes attacks cheaper, defense must become more automated to keep the cost of a successful attack high. So otherwise, the attackers will just run rampant through our defenses. Okay. Now, I said it earlier, right? Data is the fuel, and data is the currency of modern business, but it's become even more important in the age of AI. Not just the data as data, but the data that is within the large language models and other AI models, right? So what one needs to do is to have a multi-layered privacy by design approach to prevent sensitive data from entering training pipelines and to mitigate data poisoning or algorithmic manipulation. So how would we go about doing that, right? You have to prevent sensitive data from training AI, right? So you've got to do that. And then you've got to also have opt-out and contractual provisions where you ensure that enterprise AI agreements prevent training on data, all right? The second thing is, even pre-AI was very important. Like if you look at regulation like the GDPR, that is data masking, and anonymization of data, right? So using tools to mask or anonymize sensitive content before sending data back to AI, okay? The other thing is also kind of common sense, using like a four walls on premise or private cloud deployment AI, not the public AI, because once you put stuff into the public AI, it can be, hacked and other people can use. Then another thing that can be done is actually to use retrieval augmented generation known as RAG to provide context to a model at runtime, allowing it to see data without including data set. And then the last is you can use privacy enhancing techniques where you would implement federated learning or synthetic data generation. That's about sensitive data. And then preventing data poisoning, right? So what can you do? You do data validation and sanitization, right? Filtering of training data sets for anomalies or suspicious patterns. Diversify the training data using diverse verified data sources to reduce the impact of a compromised source. And I mentioned earlier about provenance, right? So maintaining provenance records, keeping records of data sources and using immutable version data sets to identify, wrong data introduction. And this is like something important. Like they say, we need to kind of fight fire with fire or cut steel with steel. Use adversarial training, training models to recognize and ignore tainted data or malicious changes. The last is ensemble methods, which is training multiple models on data variations and using the majority result to filter out poison data. Now, algorithmic manipulation is another very important one because you can use input-output filtering, where you can use what is a new term in the industry called firewall for AI tools that scan input prompts and AI-generated outputs for malicious commands and sensitive information leaks. And here's one from back in the day, or even today: strict role-based access control. Where you use strict role-based access controls to limit interaction with data or data input into the AI systems. And the lesson we can remember here is from the days of Power BI, right? When Power BI would take data from source A, source B, source C, source D, and render it into a view, and the view may not have the correct role-based access control, breaking the original. So same sort of rigor has to be put to AI, right? And then continuous monitoring has to also be done, where you're monitoring the model outputs for unexpected behavior or drift, right? Just like you would do with the machine to make sure it stays within the bounds of calibration. Same thing, calibration and monitoring has to be done for AI. Because if there's a drift from the established baseline within the noise band, it can indicate an ongoing attack. And last but not least is, I think, red teaming exercises are so apropos in this day of this age of AI. Regularly performing simulated attacks on AI systems to identify and patch vulnerabilities, just as you would do with software. Okay. Let me take a minute breather. Matt, anyone, any questions, any comments so far? Anita, am I still in the meeting?
Yep, you're still here.
Okay, just kidding,
Yep.
guys. Just
So, yep,
yeah,
Deepak in the chat said the model ensemble is also good as integrity control. So that is a good idea. That is
yeah.
true.
Thank you.
Yep.
So yeah, governance ethics are huge, right? And this is something that we need to collectively go to the next level. So what are some of the frameworks or tools, processes we can use? We've all heard about the EU AI Act and specifically Article 14, right? Which requires that high-risk systems are developed with tools for human oversight. Example, proper interfaces, interpretability, etc., to prevent risks to health, safety, or fundamental rights and people privacy. And then operational control systems. This may be a surprise to some of you, but I think organizations are implementing controls such as real-time dashboards to monitor for bias in addition to establishing human in the loop HRTL processes, right, where AI suggests but humans verify actions. Later on in the presentation, we'll talk about reinforcement learning. Somewhere there's a balance because you can never have enough people to train all of AI. So you've got to use a human in the loop along with tools like reinforcement learning to sort of find the right balance to be effective and efficient, right? And then I would say threshold-based intervention. Policies often require human intervention when the AI confidence scores drop below specific thresholds, right? Or when systems produce anomalous, high risk, or potentially biased results. And then the other thing that I can mention also is sector-specific regulations, where financial institutions utilize things like FFI, IC, Security Handbook for AI Systems, etc. And then we have the Dodd-Frank Act as an example. And audit trails and accountability are where you actually have to do the same for AI, right? It's even more important because policies demand that AI-driven decisions are logged for auditing, ensuring that human oversight is transparent, trustworthy, accountable, and in some high-risk cases, verified by at least two individuals, right? It's kind of like the sort of segregation duties principle in normal business, where the person who authorizes the invoice shouldn't pay the invoice, right? So you have to make sure there are at least two individuals here. Not exactly the same thing, but the principle is still the same. And then, you know, third party risks, right? This will be a couple of dimensions I'm going to talk about. The first is the program management dimension, because if we thought the supply chain was complicated before and there were chinks in the armor, AI can exploit them much faster, right? So therefore, third-party risk management has become even more important in the age of AI. So what can one do? First thing is certification audits, and that is vetting centers based on certification like SOC Type 2, ISO 27001, ISO 42001, which is AI management. That's a new one. And then data flow mapping. Now, data flow mapping is not a new term, right? New concept. It got elevated in importance during GDPR, but especially all of you know I'm a big believer in zero trust, and one of the key principles of zero trust, if you want to properly deploy it, is need to be able to do data flow mapping so that you can know the risk level of your data, where is it going to, so you can better protect it, right? And so, in fact, we talked about zero trust for media, but now it's zero trust for data, right? So we need to do that so that security teams can have data flow diagrams to track where data goes, whether it's processed by third parties and where it's stored. And penetration testing and bug bounties is not new, right? But we would hope that vendors who are deploying AI platforms are using the same things for AI and not just deploying it willy-nilly. And the last thing is AI specific vulnerability assessments, right? It's moving beyond traditional IT security. Vetting would now include checking for adversarial attacks, model poisoning, and prompt injection vulnerabilities in the context of the vendor's platform and the vendor's systems, right? So if external auditors had a tough job before AI, think of how much harder it is for them, right? Fortunately, the frameworks that are emerging to sort of make a common way of evaluating these risks. And then the flip side of the third party risks, right? It's strategies for secure adoption. So to ensure proper vetting and privacy of AI data, AI models, some strategies one can use are data anonymization, right? That is, anonymize or redact personal identifiers, PI, before sending data to an AI vendor to mitigate risk. And definitely, if you're in healthcare industry or companies subject to GDPR, this is really so important. Not the other companies should ignore it, but this is huge. And then we always want to save money, you want to get the cheapest thing and use the stuff. But one thing that I would say is deploy enterprise versions, right? Avoiding consumer grade AI tools for the enterprise I'm talking about. And so opting for enterprise grade solutions with explicit legally binding privacy commitments, example, the data processing agreement, DPA, like we used to have with GDPR, same thing still applies. The next thing is implement governance. Establishing AI governance policies that define which tools are permitted, which departments can use them, what types of data like PII, sensitive IP allowed to be processed, right? That's very, very important. And one of the things one can do is if you have an AI policy, when I was a CISO, I actually deployed reference guides for each department with certain use cases. What do I do? What can I do? That should be a living document that in partnership with the business you evolve because but you can't just publish that. You've got to gamify it, right? Just as we have security awareness training today, pre-AI, I think there's got to be AI specific training where it's gamified so people remember these things, right? And then lastly, I would say, prioritize self-hosting and private cloud for using like a four walls AI rather than the public AI. Okay. For high stakes data, I think that will be very, very important, right? Because then it's more possible for companies to maintain total control over the data lifecycle. Okay. Then the theme of budgeting and strategy, right? So I would say threat actors attacking is such a high threat velocity due to automation now. For example, they can deploy 10,000 personalized phishing emails per minute or even greater, right? So that's the first thing. Then agentic AI risks, right? The rise of autonomous agentic AI, which can execute tasks across systems, has expanded and created significant new attack surfaces, right? And 73% of organizations in the study that I read are fearing data exfiltration by these agents. I mean, if you think about the API economy and the challenge of securing APIs, think of how much harder it is to secure agentic AI, right? And there's visibility gaps, okay, where CISOs are not able to have visibility into how AI is being used in the environment, whether it's because of shadow AI or whatever, right? So therefore, it's very, very important to deploy governance monitoring tools. And by the way, these are not cheap, but we need to do it. And then security teams are now using AI to automate, huge percentage of incident responses. And I can't swear to it, but I think I read an article where it says as high as 90% it's gotten to where people are using AI, right? So in other words, AI-powered security is no longer a luxury, but it's an essential, even albeit an expensive component of modern infrastructure. And then a new term that's come about in the industry is now the AI tax, right? Because you've got to invest so much more on AI tools to stay ahead of the curve, so that we need to be able to have an AI tax, right, on top of the regular security budget to invest in AI. And I also heard that cybersecurity is now exceeding 20% of the average IT budget. And guys, this is a huge thing because see, back in the day when I was in manufacturing, if you had, probably, even 10% of the IT budget security, that was a huge thing. But, 5 to 7% in manufacturing seemed to be what I recollect. And now they're talking about average is 20%. So, in the security field, it's a good time to be because you're going to get a lot of tools to combat AI. Okay, let me take a breather. Any questions, comments, anything in the chat, Matt?
Nothing in the chat, no, but
Okay.
I will bring up that the third party, what we have done in our organization is integrate that within our VRM, so our vendor
Hmm.
management. And what we have done is we've created an AI addendum and a form they have to fill out if they're going to use any of our data, any that will be tied to their AI model. We need to know about it, and we need to understand. Because obviously with a lot of vendors, I mean, it's hard to do that with Microsoft, but with the other vendors, you can kind of pinpoint and say, hey, we have an idea of how you're going to use AI, and we have to make sure that it's not going to touch the external sources. So
Yeah.
that's a big push within my organization.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, and there's no choice. I want to say a few more words on the AI tax, right? Because what it actually does is it uh, refers to the massive capital expenditures required to run, secure, and update AI-based security system, right? So it's becoming a new normal, if you will, for maintaining security. Therefore, often forcing trade-offs in other areas of IT spend because there really is no choice, right? Okay, so now on to the next pillar. So talent and training strategies, right? You know, first is developing agent manager competencies, meaning training managers to treat AI agents as team members which need instructions, guardrails, and performance monitoring, just like people. I know we sometimes don't like to monitor people, but we got to monitor these agents as well, right? So therefore, as part of this, they need to include troubleshooting, ensuring data security, and optimizing the AI outputs. And then establishing AI literacy and fluency, right? I talked earlier about the AI policy, reference use guides, but it has to actually transcend that, right? You have to train employees to understand AI capabilities and limitations, focusing on digital fluency, right? And interpreting AI outputs rather than just using tools. You know, there was a term that came about probably, gosh, 10 to 15 years ago that talked about digital natives, right? And digital natives are the kids of the generation that started around 2005 2010 that literally grew up with a iPad in the hand to play, etc. And now I think enterprise employees have to become AI fluents, right? So that because it's become an essential part of everybody's tools. The next thing is human in the loop. We mentioned that before, right? Is to use human in the loop to ensure critical decision making will remain to the humans, right? Fostering judgment on when to rely on AI versus human expertise. Okay. And, you know, AI is come, AI is new. And if you just sort of, if security continues to be like the Department of No, they used to joke about us, right? We can't do that, especially with AI, right? We have to foster a culture of experimentation in partnership with upper management and IT and everything, right? But not to just jump headfirst into the pond of AI, but rather, I would say, encouraging low risk, high impact pilot projects. Example, using AI for drafts or data analysis to build confidence. And then defining clear roles, right? It's very important to delineate the responsibilities to ensure AI handles repetitive tasks while humans focus on creativity, empathy, and complex problem solving. And then also embedding AI in SOPs, right? So standardizing AI usage by integrating it into workflows and celebrating adoption wins. And this is a big one, embedding AI in standard operating practices, because, guys, one of the songs I sing lately is a notion of observability transcending visibility. And in order to have observability to really help a company, it needs to do exactly this, embedding AI in standard operating practices. So, for example, the AI, the network layer, is in the SASE layer is detects a denial of service attack. It should shut it off immediately, right? And it can send an alert, and we can always tune it, but it needs to take action because just having tools is not enough. You need them to able to do it with level of oversight, like we talked earlier. Okay, and then the as far as the employees go, three things are important, right? Data literacy, it's very, very important. Training employees to interpret, clean, and use data effectively. Prompt engineering is another. Teaching staff how to communicate effectively with AI to get desired results, right? So if you thought garbage in, garbage out was a bad thing back in the day of punch cards, and I actually use punch cards or even PCs, I mean, it can be far worse because, inadvertently, if you don't ask the right questions or, the bias can be generated by that. So making sure people understand how to effectively use AI, right? And last but not the least is AI ethics and safety. That's training and recognizing AI bias, ensuring transparency and maintaining security, and actually having like a hotline. So if you use an AI and you find that it gave incorrect thing, not to try to fix it yourself, there's got to be a process by which you do something about it, right? That's why I always talk about the AI development life cycle. If AI or AI model has been deployed, how to make sure that it's recalibrated and re-baselined and re-released, because otherwise it's just going to get worse and worse, right? Okay, so we got to that part of the short. Now we come to the fireside chat. This is a good time for me to take a minute or two breather. Guys, anything to add? What stood out to you? Anything, just so I take a break and I'm not talking your ears off. Who wants to start on the board? I'm going to have to unfortunately call out names now to help me. Anita will go with you. Any things that came to your mind that you'd like to share with our audience?
Hi, Arun, and hi, everyone. Apologies for my voice. I've been really sick the past few
Oh,
days with high
sorry.
fever. So I won't turn on the camera because I look really worse than I sound. Um, I think that was a really great presentation. You brought out really great points. What really caught my attention was the AI audits. I think that is extremely important. I just want to emphasize the need for ongoing audits. So not just a one-time thing where we're just auditing and then forgetting about it, right? Like we need to make sure that we're continuously auditing AI systems. So
Mhm.
audit is not just a checkbox, but it's actually happening on an ongoing basis, and that is extremely important when it comes to AI. So I just wanted to emphasize that.
No, I fully agree with you. I think the governance is very important, but it has to be dynamic, adaptive, and cyclical. And I fully agree with you, Anita. Well said. And I won't trouble you more. Take good care. Be well. Uh,
Thank you.
Matt, what about you, my friend? I know you already said something earlier. Anything else to add for this part of it before we go into the next section?
Yeah, so strengthening the governance, pretty much at my organization, we actually do not allow private instances of ChatGPT or any other flavor of it, right? So blocking those through our systems will make sure and maintain that employees can only use approved AI tools. That helps with a lot of the shadow, I'll call it shadow AI.
Mhm. Right,
Right?
right. Oh, fully. Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Yep, yep. So, oh, do we have a question? Let's see. Mary, go ahead, Mary.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Hopefully you don't hear my dog in the background. He's going nuts. I don't know why. But I did want to, one thing that you touched on, Arun, that's just really resonates, and it's a theme ever since I started in security is you need to bake it in from the beginning, right? And
Mhm.
make sure for it to be fully effective, it cannot be an afterthought, and that includes AI and any type of security, any type of anything that you want that's important to make sure it is implemented correctly. It definitely needs to, be thought of and be integrated into the development of whatever solution you're doing.
Right. No, thank you, Mary. Yeah, so we'll leave some of the other board members to contribute in this upcoming section. So this was the fireside chat that I was supposed to have with Mike Belatz. Unfortunately, he's stuck on the plane and we miss him. But I thought, we came up with some questions together, and he and I have chatted. So let me represent it collectively from some of our chats, some of my ideas. So there's 5 questions that we had created. I think it's 5, but we'll go through them anyway. And so originally, this slide only had the question. Matt knows that, but you know, how the question was, how do you leverage AI for threat detection while mitigating the risk of bad actors using AI to bypass the same defenses, right? And so there's a few things. The first thing is to say it's a paradigm shift from reactive monitoring to predictive architectural resilience. I'm going to repeat that: predictive architectural resilience, which is the flip side of what Anita said a minute ago, which I summarized as dynamic, adaptive, and cyclical governance, right? So predictive architectural resilience, also memorable as power. Okay, so let's talk about leveraging AI for advanced threat detection. The first thing you can do is behavioral anomaly detection, right? Because AI systems now establish deep baselines for normal user behavior, user communication, network traffic, and system calls, right? So AI will then identify subtle deviations such as unusual lateral movement or late in the night data aggregation that signal an intrusion, even if the attacker uses legitimate credentials, right? Also, predictive threat modeling, right? I mean, this predicts predictive, what's it called? Predictive maintenance in manufacturing, right? Where you look at the history of the machine and you try to understand when it's going to break down and take corrective actions in a timely fashion so that the machine doesn't get burnt out and you face downtime. I mean, I think predictive threat modeling with the help of AI, with the vast data sets that they have, the modern platforms can then use generative AI to simulate millions of attack scenarios, right? Allowing SOC teams to harden defenses against polymorphic malware and automated exploit chains before even they are launched in many cases. And then the third thing is automated triage and response under this threat detection is that AI-driven XDR tools can correlate disparate signals across cloud, identity, and endpoints to reconstruct attack paths, right, in minutes and initiate real-time isolation of compromised assets. And that's really huge. Okay. The second thing is, mitigation of the risk of AI-driven bypasses, right? So the first thing is adversarial AI defense. Protect the defensive models themselves from data poisoning, injecting malicious training data and evasion attacks, right? And modifying inputs to trick the AI through regular model auditing and validation, just like Anita said a couple of minutes ago. And yes, I have to plug zero trust again. So zero trust in the identity fabric, right? Since AI-driven phishing and deepfakes make human judgments fallible, organizations are moving towards zero trust architecture even more than they were in the past, right? Because as we all know, zero trust model assumes a breach is always in progress and requires explicit verification for every action, regardless of the user's location or supposed identity. And this is something really cool. I know some or all of us, and I'm sure Matt in particular has heard of this technology, deception technology, right? These honeypots, where companies put this outwardly facing honeypots to deceive hackers and see what kind of attacks they make, and using that data to harden the microsegmentation and their firewalls and all that stuff, right? The same thought process will be there for AI, where AI deception techniques. Defenders will now turn the tables by using AI to create fake employee profiles, honeycomb documents, or honey documents, right? These will act as breadcrumbs for malicious agents, just like the infrastructure honeypot, right? So any attempt to interact with these, sort of AI honeypots, my way of calling them is to trigger immediate high confidence alert. Okay. And then continuous security validation, again, to clap back to Anita. She's correct. We need to make sure that we don't just do the static check the box annual audits, but they have to be replaced by autonomous red teaming and always on penetration testing that constantly probes for gaps in the AI stack. Okay, that's very, very key. And then governance and human oversight is the third pillar. So human in the loop. While AI handles detection and initial triage at scale, right? Human analysts remain critical for high stakes decisions, such as containing business critical systems or navigating legal implications. And, you know, I have never been a fan of putting all the eggs in one basket, and people probably laugh at me. Unfortunately, now I got to recant just a little bit because I think with the pace and stage of AI, platform consolidation is going to become more and more common because it's much easier to, not say easy, but easier to, inspect fewer platforms in a to one, two, or three platforms in 10 different platforms. So I see enterprises going towards platform consolidation. Okay, so then question number one, who on the board wants to act or anyone else chime in on this one? Anything I said just because I'm trying to answer this, you're reading Mike's mind, huh? So he's not here. So anyone? Rajesh? Am I still here?
Yep, you're still here. We can still hear you.
Okay. Okay, so no one wants to add anything. No problem. We'll continue on. We'll have a closing chat. It's fine. Um, Yeah, so here's a very, very important one, right? Is a question that we came up with is, how should cyber leaders and practitioners adapt skill sets to transition from manual threat hunting to managing and securing AI-driven security systems, right? So first, let's talk about for leaders. Leaders have to embrace the notion of AI governance and ethics. So you have to deploy frameworks for AI, data privacy, bias mitigation, and compliance. Example, GDPR, HIPAA, or the EU AI Act principles, right? And then, embracing strategic resource allocation, that is investing in training and tools to move from manual high volume tasks to higher level strategic analysis. Then redefining incident response, right? Updating the playbooks to include AI-driven detection, investigation, automated recovery actions, right? You have the tools, but you can't use the same old playbooks, right? And then really foster and develop a adversarial thinking mindset because in order to beat the enemy, you need to think like the enemy, right? So foster a purple team culture that uses AI to simulate and defend against sophisticated automated attacks. Okay. And then on the flip side, the practitioners, the people in the front lines, right? I would say we have to understand AI fundamentals, right? Understand how models detect anomalies, including behavior analysis and predictive AI to interpret AI-driven alerts. And then data engineering and management. Learn how to manage data quality because AI security relies on accurate, clean, and well-labeled data to avoid hallucinations or false positives, right? I know back in pre-AI days, people didn't want to do data classification, data labeling. They thought it was terrible, but I will say that if you don't take AI data that goes in the AI system seriously, classify it and clean it and label it, then how in God's name are you going to be able to train the AI properly, right? Then the next thing I would say is model security or adversarial defense, developing skills to test for model poisoning, evasion, and theft to secure the AI systems themselves. Okay. Then it'll be good for practitioners to learn about prompt engineering or automation, right? Gaining proficiency in interacting with generative AI security tools for faster incident response, or sometimes even just to sort of get ahead of the curve, right? I used to always call myself the captain of the good ship cyber, right? But now we're all engineers on the good ship cyber, right? In the age of AI. Then hybrid analysis, combining deep technical knowledge, networking, and forensics on one side with AI generated insights to validate threats. Okay, anyone else wants to contribute to this answering this question? Oh, you must be hungry, guys.
I think, Arun, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was thinking, it's important to develop fundamental knowledge in machine learning concepts and data science. Also, it's also crucial to like focus on interpreting AI outputs rather than manually reviewing every alert.
Mhm.
And then obviously, we need to strengthen the skills in governance, module oversight, and AI risk management. So those are the three things that are key, I believe.
Well said, Anita. Fully agree with you. Okay, good. E- Right. So then another thing we talked about is what protocols can prevent, data from being exposed through or used to train public LLM. So let's go through that. First, I would recommend data sanitization and redaction, right? So automated redaction. So implementing tools to remove PII and trade secrets from inputs before they are sent to the LLM. So kind of like back in the day, I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with this, but when first the instant messaging came by, like the Microsoft Messenger and whatnot, you could put a content firewall, right? So that it would interpret things like, bad language and whatnot and just block that communication based on the policy. You're going to have to do a similar thing like an AI content firewall now, or which can then, redact the inputs even before, right, or block them. Then anonymization and masking, replacing sensitive data with placeholders to prevent model training on outputting personal information. That's huge. And tokenization, right? Swapping confidential data with non-sensitive tokens that maintain data utility for the model without really revealing the raw information. Then input output filtering, right? Prompt filtering is key because utilizing API security and scanners to monitor prompts for sensitive data before processing. And then I think Anita was sort of leaning towards this one a minute ago is output scrubbing, right? Validating LLM outputs to detect and block any inadvertent disclosure of confidential information. And then last pillar, I think, well, one of the last is training and model security. First, differential privacy. I think some of you guys heard me talk about this at FutureCon recently, but what is that? Differential privacy is introducing mathematical noise into training data to ensure that the model cannot memorize and leak individual private data points. It's very huge, especially with the EU AI Act and GDPR. And then synthetic data generation, training models on fictitious data that mimics real proprietary information, thereby eliminating the risk of actual leaks while effectively training. And then architectural and access control. One is private self-hosted LLMs. Matt just talked about that, using on-premise or secure cloud environments to keep data within a control compliant perimeter. Again, RBAC, but least privilege access, especially, right? Enforcing strict role-based and user-level access controls to ensure users only input data they authorize to access. The famous HIPAA principle of minimum necessary access. And then data minimization, right? Sharing only the absolute minimum amount of data required for the LLM to complete a task, no more and no less. And then regulatory compliance can be our friend, right, Anita, to get money or get things moving forward. And I think in this age of AI, things like the GDPR, HIPAA, and EU AI Act can help, persuade upper management. Thoughts, anyone?
Yeah, I agree with you, Arun, on that. I think it's important to establish strict data classification and prohibit entry of confidential data into public LLMs. Like you mentioned, we have to use private and enterprise controlled AI environments. I would also add that they need to have like encryption and DLP controls implemented in place. And something else, it's when we talk about like third party vendors, in their contracts, we need to make sure that They have strict data retention and model training usage clauses included in there. So that's something that may get lost or not always mentioned in vendor contracts.
Fully agreed with you. Well said, Anita. Really, that's a fantastic point. Fully agreed with you. And
Yep.
okay,
We have a question.
yeah,
We have a hand up. Yep, Deepak, you can go ahead, Deepak.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, just adding a few things about the data sanitization and redaction. Definitely, as a general practice, that is the way to go. But at times, when you are doing some demographic information, so you have to be careful. So basically you have to assess your use case, what you're trying to address. And the other one from the from prevention perspective, I think it will be also good to have separate training data versus production data. If you have separation between them, that will also help.
yeah. Well said, Deepak. It's Deepak, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Thank you, Deepak.
Thanks.
Okay, I think then let's move on. So, first of all, does everyone know what reinforcement learning is? Have you actually heard the term? Anyone? Have you just say yes or no or whatever? That's fine. But okay, so I mentioned earlier, right? You can rely on humans only so much, and you can only hire people. But the scale and scope of AI deployment is getting so huge, you can't do all validation humans. So reinforcement learning is a practice of which you actually are able to get the AI to self-learn and self-heal even and self-improve by using game theory by a risk-reward type of training approach. Okay, that's a high-level definition of reinforcement learning, and I could probably have another presentation just on that subject, a very passion item for me, but not today. But having introduced RL, key ways RL can boost AI efficiency and effectiveness include, first of all, dynamic decision making and adaptation. See, unlike static pre-programmed system, RL agents adjust behavior based on feedback, rewards and penalties. I said that a minute ago, allowing them to thrive in unpredictable real-world environments. Okay, and then sequential task optimization. RL excels at managing multi-step processes where current actions affect future outcomes, such as supply chain logistics. Matt mentioned that's a tough challenge. Autonomous robotic control or improving conversational AI like LLMs. Okay. And then efficiency versus simulation. Systems can learn in safe simulated environments like virtual production lines or virtual worlds to learn optimal strategies, reducing waste and minimizing downtime before real world deployment. And then, of course, I mentioned this at the start, self improvement and autonomy, right? RL enables systems to improve performance over time without continuous human supervision, reducing manual tuning, increase operational efficiency, improved operational autonomy, and less cycles of people just chasing things just to chase things. Last but not the least, right, in people-centric security, enhanced user interaction. So in applications like recommendation systems or personalized education, RL optimizes for long-term user satisfaction rather than immediate short-term engagement, right? Leading to a higher quality, more effective AI services. Okay. Any comments, thoughts on this on RL, guys?
Hey Arun, this is Don. How's it going?
Hey, good Don, brother. What's happening?
Hey, question: Is this, this reinforcement learning? I don't know if it's related, but is it similar to, there's been some systems that end up having two bots end up talking to each other, and then they start creating their own language, and they end up turning those systems away. Are they using reinforcement learning for that? If so,
No,
where
no.
I was heading at is what type of guardrails, other than just unplugging the system because, you don't want the system going awry in that type of situation.
Right. No. No, that I don't believe that was using reinforcement learning. But let's chat later about it for sure, right?
Okay.
But I think reinforcement learning, in my view, is really something like it's the sort of the secret weapon, right, to enable security teams with get and vendors creating products because it can really help because you can only get so many human people, right? And I think the self-learning, self-optimization is huge. Okay. Then the next question. Ah, see, I actually read your mind, Anita. Remember you were talking about this earlier? How do you evaluate the security posture of third-party AI tools before integrating them into your enterprise? So, yeah, so basically, and I think let's talk to maybe Matt, I suppose. So, evaluating the security posture of third-party AI tools involves a multi-layered, no-fooling assessment based on data privacy, model integrity, and compliance, right? So key steps include verifying certifications like the SOC 2, the ISO 27001, reviewing data usage policies, ensuring data privacy, analyzing access controls, auditing the vendor's vulnerability and incident response capabilities are priority. And then what Anita just said earlier is take, just like the data processing agreements do for private data, doing the checks and balances of the AI before the contract is signed, right? And then the first thing you should do is, right, having a pre-integration risk assessment, right? So I think if determine and check if the vendor uses enterprise data to train their public models. Make sure that they comply with GDPR, HIPAA, CCPA, EU AI Act, and all that, because if they don't care about it, you're in trouble, aren't you? Then data residency. See, identify where the data is stored and processed, ensuring compliance with local regulations. Now, for example, the China cybersecurity law and the China privacy law, I don't, when they were written, they wanted all Chinese citizen data to be stored in China, right? So I think that's why Microsoft got out of China, if I'm not mistaken. Was it Google? One of them, right? Because that's a heavy burden to carry. And then make sure they have the proper uh, security certifications such as SOC Type 2 or high trust in HIPAA, etc. And then I think Anita touched upon this earlier, is doing AI specific risk evaluation. So evaluating the vendor's approach to preventing prompt injection, data leakage, adversarial attacks, and also I think what is their notification process in case of AI breach. Okay. All right. And then the next thing I would say is a technical and architectural review, right? Look at the integration points, assess how the AI tool integrates with existing system, API security, and plugins. Then next is the access controls. I keep singing that song, sorry guys. Verifying RBAC and SSO support, right? It's important. And encryption. Encryption is absolutely huge. Ensuring data is encrypted both at rest and in transit, because that can prevent data breach effect. And then three, this is kind of a low-tech one, but it's vendor governance and stability, right? I think Anita was touching upon this one earlier too, is documentation review, requesting detailed model documentation, including known limitations, training data sources and architecture. And then incident response, right? Review the incident response plan, ask for recent penetration test results is very, very important. And also to, as I mentioned earlier, making sure that they have developed playbooks for various types of AI attacks on the infrastructure. And then last is the continuous monitoring, right? Continuously monitor the model for, sorry, continuously monitor for model drift, anomalous queries or policy violations. Make sure that you and the platform owner are doing that in periodically. And then, like Anita said earlier, regular audits, conducting periodic reviews of the vendor's security posture rather than just one check a year or just one check in totality. It's not good enough. And then, you all heard of this term called CSPM, right? Cloud Security Posture Management. Well, I would say now there's a new field called AI Security Posture Management, AISPM. So using those to gain visibility into AI model risks, training data, and inference pipelines. Comments, guys. This is the second last question. Help me out. I want to take a break. I want to hear from you too.
Yeah, I was throwing that out there, Arun, about the DPA. That's very strong. It's a good document to have between your vendors. to ensure that all the data processing is all being handled in a certain way. So, yep, Deepak, you can go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, just adding what actually Arun mentioned about the China stuff, so like if you have third party, if they're gonna actually serve the Chinese citizen data and so forth, it's a similar to GDPR. You have to make sure that, even if you are looking at the from remote side, it is considered as a data transfer. And basically, it boils down to you have to have standard contractual clauses in place. And Chinese, I think I'm not sure if they had come out with their own, what should be the contractual clauses there for the data transfer when it happens. So those are the things that are still applicable, where data cannot leave the specific country,
Yeah.
So just to add on. Thanks.
Thanks, Deepak. Appreciate that. Yeah, no, for sure, right. And this is the last question of the fireside chat component, right? And this slide I made specifically for you, Anita, because you love this kind of stuff, right? So, what frameworks would you use to manage AI risks, such as algorithmic bias, model hallucination, data privacy? So, one is the NIST AI framework, right? AIRMF. The next is the ISA IEC 42001. Another one is the Google Secure AI Framework, SEIF, and then hallucination reduction RAG framework, and then the EUAI Act, which has become quickly the gold standard for AI governance, right? So, anyone starting with you, Anita, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think you mentioned most of the frameworks, the NIST AI risk management framework, the EU AI Act. I completely agree with you on that. I just add it's important to incorporate, the ISO 23894 guidelines to address AI specific risk management processes. So that's just something else to keep in mind.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's hard to, it's becoming fast getting to be an alphabet soup of regulations, isn't it, Anita?
Right, yeah, I agree.
But okay, so that's good. So then now is that time, the round table discussion. I think Anita's going to smile. I always have a Sun Tzuism, and in the midst of the AI chaos and disruption, there is also a lot of opportunity for all of us. Okay, so that being said, we're going to get into this. I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, what happened?
And we
Yeah,
have
stop.
Dan has his hand up too.
Okay.
You can go ahead, Dan.
Hey, good evening, everybody. So Arun, I've got a question. The framework question you just asked was excellent. My question is around, as an executive or as a CISO, how would you communicate that to the board? What type of language? Because when you communicate with the board, your job basically is to educate them in normal language, right? So that they understand that you're doing the right things. How would you position that to the board? What would you do?
Well, there are two things, right? The first thing, you can't talk about technical mumbo jumbo, if you will, because you're going to tune people out very fast, right? So I would use a sort of a two-pronged approach. The first is storytelling, right? And the fact is to find transferable stories from your own career or your friends' careers that can translate and map to the AI era, because people respond far much better to stories than scare tactics or those kinds of things. But secondarily, I think trying to find sort of parallel metaphor to explain to them. So for example, take into account, they may not understand exactly what AI bias is, right? So maybe you tell them, okay, imagine you have some medical condition, right, and you get a couple of drugs you're going to take into account. What happens if the drugs have poison, or have got bad ingredients in them? So using that sort of metaphor analogy to explain to them, okay, just as that happens if we don't calibrate and have a proper AI or data quality management as part of an AI development lifecycle, there can be problems for enterprise. So using the two-pronged approach at a higher level, you can have a in-depth conversation later. But does that resonate at any level with you? What I said?
It does, but I think the challenge with people at the board level is, they read a lot, right? And so taking like a framework and communicating that, and like you said, make it something they can relate to, make it relatable. Right. And I think the challenge is with AI is everyone's reading and everyone's hearing all these things of what it can do and what the dangers are and things like that. And being able to communicate to the board that, hey, we're doing the right things. Here's what we're doing. Here's what it means. And here's why we're okay. I think is going to be a challenge. It's very similar. I look at AI very similar to OT from 5, 6 years ago.
Right.
Very similar, right? We've got OT. We're not sure what to do with it. We're not sure how to govern it, but the plant's working, so we know we're okay, right? And so you're laughing because that's the world you come from, right?
You're right. Oh yeah.
So that's whenever I look at AI, I look exactly like OT, and I see where we're at with OT now, and I'm like, okay, that's good. And so I kind of think along the same lines. Does that make sense?
It does, and it's funny because you're going to give me another chance to talk about zero trust. In the example you gave, right? So the plant's running fine and all that stuff, right? And so we're talking the manufacturing side. Many a time, there's two distinct, OT and IT. OT people trying to do IT stuff, right? And they may not have been micro segmentation between the OT side and the IT side, and the typical danger that used to happen in the past was supply chain, right? So, for example, many times people want to have a machine fixed fast, so they'll have the vendor log in through an insecure wireless connection and connect to the machine somehow. And unfortunately, they were not segmented from the enterprise network, and there have been instances where there's breaches by that lateral movement, right? So that's
Yep.
when zero trust and micro-segmentation came up. But now I think zero trust for data validity, but also zero trust for the AI itself is very, very important, right? Because that's what we can learn from the OT example. Because if you don't micro-segment and if you don't use compartments, right, then there's going to be an issue. I fully agree with you, by the way.
It's funny because when you look at this, they all follow the same principles. Whether you're talking about the business network, the OT network, AI, it's all the same principles, but it's different processes, different tools, and different people. So you've got to be able to incorporate the different teams and the different things into the same overall principle, right? And I think that's where
Right.
people struggle.
No, I fully agree with you. It's the end. I mean, at the end of the day, you can, user awareness and user education, right? It's like they say 90% of security, 95% of security incidents are attributable to people, right? And I think AI security risk, it'll probably get worse. But I think the thing that also worries me sometimes now is that executives are going to be responsible for AI breaches as well, right? And to your
Yes.
point, I think if you cannot get them to understand, how can they help you protect the company, them, and you, right? So that's a big challenge for sure.
Cool. Thank you.
Of course. Well, let's catch up one day. Who else? Anyone else, guys? Is my dear friend Marcia on the line? Oh, I see her. Hey, Marcia, talk to us. Oh, she didn't hear me. Okay, so I guess there's no questions in the chat. I just looked. So Matt, what's your thoughts now?
No.
Oh, can't hear me, Arun?
Go ahead.
Now I can hear you, dear
Oh,
Marcia.
I guess I can.
Oh, I
No,
think you dropped off.
it's very interesting. Thank you for those questions and everything because that gets you to thinking. When I think of AI, and then I'm gonna go further. I, how do we empty this thing out when it gets corrupted? How do we, refresh it? How do we do other things? So those questions have not been answered, and no one seems to be thinking about them.
I meet people from time to time and ask, they say, we're using AI. I said, do you have an AI policy? And they look at me with a deer in the headlight look and say, what are you asking me that for? It's pretty sad, isn't it? And even at FutureCon, I was chatting with people, and I don't want to put a percentage, but a significant percentage just didn't seem to companies didn't seem to do. They want to use, but not, but it's back to the plan, do, check, act. They want to like just do an act rather than planning and checking, which I think Anita was saying earlier. What do you, Anita?
Yep, it's very good.
Right, yeah. And just going back to Dan's question, I think that was an excellent question, Dan. If I can elaborate a little bit more on that, I think Arun answered it perfectly. He mentioned about storytelling. I think that's extremely important when you talk to the board, right? I would just also add that when you talk to the board, they understand. You have to speak their language, right? And the way they understand is in dollar amounts, right? So when you talk to the board, you have to explain to them in terms of dollars. AI, now everybody knows about AI, right? It's a buzzword, so that's a positive thing when you talk to the board. So you don't need to explain much about what AI is compared to like if you need to justify another investment, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Um, so whenever you talk to the board, you just have to explain, for example, like, okay, we need to invest in AI. This is how much it's going to cost, or this is how much it's going to save us. So they'll understand when you speak in dollar amounts. That's my take on that.
Yeah, well said, Anita. I agree with you. What else?
Yep, does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Well, I think people are getting hungry, tired, or both,
Yeah,
Matt.
we got one. So we have
I
should
think
leaders.
that,
Oh,
yeah,
oh, go ahead.
I think there's a comment in the chat. I was just,
Yep.
yep.
It says, should leaders and practitioners take training or use AI to learn how to present to the board? Good question.
Yeah, well, I think you have to do both, right? But in this way, because what I mean is, you can use AI to get some guidance, right? It's pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
Gemini is pretty good, and ChatGPT, but that's only going to carry you to so far, right? I think getting practical training, I don't know why that exists, would be good. So it's sort of a two-step up. But the step two, the problem becomes always budget, right? Many companies are cutting back training budgets and everything we've heard. So that's the danger. But I think to the extent you can do it, do both, starting with using the AI to get started, right? But I think, yes, Dan, I agree with you. And that's what I was saying in my presentation. The basic stuff we need to do and all the dimensions I talked about, people need to know. They need to, an educated AI generation workforce is the better workforce, right? Otherwise, the risks are pretty high.
Yep.
So Arun, I
But
think
companies
that's
need to,
the go ahead.
go ahead. Sorry.
I
No,
was
no, I'm
gonna
done.
say
No, go
that
ahead.
that's the thing. AI is just another technology. It's just like the first time anything came out. We need to apply all the same principles to it. We need to apply, the DLP, data protection, privacy, training, policies, procedures, third-party risk management. We've got to find a way to fold it in to all of those things.
Fully agreed with you. I mean, it's not reinventing the wheel. It's just using the same old toolkits, but probably in a different way, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. We have another one here. It says, isn't that kind of the role of a business information security officer? So yeah.
If the company has a BISO, right? But if they don't have a
Yeah.
BISO, then
Yep.
but I think you see one of the things that I always try to promote by my Power of Federation is security embedded in the business. I mean, if you have at least enough people to adopt to one to each major department, or at least two departments to one, you can have people embedded in the business. I think it's even more vital these days, where you're your designated liaison to different, so they can come to you for trusted advice, right? Because we all know you can publish a 20-page reference guide. People are never going to read it. They want an answer fast, right? So I think now more than ever, building relationship, fostering the trust across the business, and having a culture of communication, collaboration is very important. Additionally to that, I think partnerships is a very huge, because the thing is, as the different acts come and how do you respond to AI, there's going to be government regulations. But, I think, forums such as these, intra-private partnerships and collaboration is very, very important, because, if all of us pool our resources and learnings, we'll be able to mature faster in the adoption of AI, if that makes any kind of sense. Yeah, risk assessment is very important, right? But I mean, the thing is, the risk assessment dimension, Dan, is the fact that it's two different risk assessments, right? One is the enterprise risk assessment that you always do, or at least on an annual level. But now, as part of the enterprise risk assessment, there's to be a point-in-time AI risk assessment, but then an ongoing AI risk assessment with as your models are deployed as part of a project basis, if you will, for sure. And then, well, so Marcia, I see a question. Do you need an AI officer? Well, I think companies do need an AI officer. I think I know some companies that already have appointed chief AI officer, just like there's a chief data officer, there's a chief AI officer. I think that's necessary for sure. Some companies might make somebody in IT that, but I think it's important enough that there should be an AI officer for sure. I think it's a good thing to do. Obviously, smaller to mid-size, they can only hire so much headcount, but the larger companies like banks or huge financial institutions or huge healthcares or huge farmers, they should employ an AI officer. It's necessary.
I think
Wonderful.
the
Well done.
challenge there, Arun, is going to be putting that AI officer with some level of authority and getting them locked into the leadership team, right? So like a C level, so that they're also communicating with the privacy officer and the CISO and all the other stuff.
Well, I think that the AI officer will have better luck becoming sitting at the executive roundtable than security officers and privacy officers have, because AI is first and foremost well accepted as a key business innovation driver, right? But I fully agree with you. I think yes, they should be there, because otherwise, what's the point, right? You've gone to
Right.
this. You won't carry any mandate just as a figurehead. You can't really drive meaningful change or adaptation at all. So, guys, I wanted to ask you this. What did I'm going to force everybody to speak now, and this thing I always do when I'm in any meeting. So, I'm not going to have to call your names, but I'll do it anyway. So, let's start and go around the table. I want to hear from you. I'm not looking for a pat on the back. I just want to know, what did you get out of this presentation? What resonated? Okay, so Matt, I see your face, so we'll start with you.
I just think it was a very good talk. Again, this is a new evolution of AI, and understanding how everyone handles it in their organization. Piecing it all together. It's going to be a long time, and then once we get into quantum computing, I mean, right now already we have people hacking Claude, right, for making malware right now. So that's the newest release, and stocks are plummeting because of the Claude security. So AI is not just helping us; it's going to hurt us. We have to be ahead of it, and it has so many arms to it.
And legs also.
Yeah,
Thank
arms
you.
and legs. Yep,
Yeah.
maybe multiple heads too.
Yeah. Viraj, what about you, my friend? What resonated? Any general thoughts? Like to hear from you. And you can come on video for a minute too. It'd be nice to see your face. It's been a couple of years. Yes, Viraj is on mute. Okay, who wants to go? Dan, you've been putting things in the chat. Why don't you come on camera for a minute and share your wisdom with us? Dan
All right, hold
Ackerman,
on.
that is.
There you go. I even got my background up so you can't see the hockey game on behind me. No, I think this is great because not only were the ideas shared very valuable, the collaboration I think is the most important part. We all need to continue to talk about these things and get practical knowledge from each other. Because I think too many times, like if a vendor comes in, they're giving you their picture of the puzzle and you're not getting real world discussions. So anytime we get an audience like this together to talk about what they may be seeing in their organization, I think is always a bonus.
That's great. Thanks, Dan. I'm going by my screen. Anita, what about you?
Well, I think it was such a great presentation, and just something else that I forgot to mention, since we were talking about, how to talk to the board. I think beside, just getting everybody AI training and technical training, it's important also to get like negotiation skills training, so that in particular leaders know how to negotiate when they talk to the board, so that way they can get their budget approved. I've seen a lot of cyber leaders on LinkedIn, they complain about not being able to get their budget approved, right? So I think it really comes down to perhaps they also need to see on their end like how they're doing, right? Not just to blame the board, but like have they taken on trainings on how to negotiate with the board, how to persuade them. So I think that's something else to consider, right? Just to get negotiation skills training. What do you guys think about that?
I think negotiation skills training is a very, very important thing, right? And I think it's more apropos. I fully agree with you, Anita, for sure. Yeah, it can, and especially when you're dealing with the boards, negotiation, it's very important skill to have for sure. Yep, I agree. Mary, I was going to call on you next anyway. Go for it. Come on camera for a minute so I can see your face if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I was going on camera. So I think for me, what I got out of it, not only was, get some great insights from you, Arun, but also insights from the other participants and attendees to, just get the collaboration like someone else mentioned, and just exchange of ideas and things to think about as a whole. Hey, have you thought about this? So just like she was talking about negotiation skills training and things like that, stuff that you wouldn't normally, I wouldn't normally think about. So I thought it was a wonderful presentation, and really appreciate your time giving us your insights, Arun.
Oh, happy to do it, right? Uh, and then Deepak, what about you, my friend? Anything to further to add? And he's on mute. Okay. Okay, we'll move on to Don. Hey, Don, what's up with you, my friend? What resonated? Any thoughts? Any ideas? Anything?
It was very insightful as always, Arun. It got me thinking about other things. Just there's the securing of like company assets or limiting access, but one of the things I start thinking, and I've had this discussion with my CIO, is all right, you can limit those assets, but people are still going to try to use AI in other fashions. Maybe use their phone. How do you minimize that risk? That's there. Uh, Another thing that I thought about, and I've heard on the news, is there's a lot of use of AI, good adoption, but at the same time, what they're finding is people are not using their brains as much. Yeah, I've heard that. So to me, there's probably a little bit of caution. Use it definitely, but still remember that the brain is still there for use.
Yeah, no, yeah, well said. No, I mean, it's not easy, is it? Yeah, but it is also an opportunity, right? I
Mhm.
mean, with AI is great for innovation, but it also brings a hell of a lot of chaos and disruption at the same time. And
Yes.
you've got to be able to manage the change, right?
Yep.
And disrupt effectively and efficiently. Yeah. Thanks, Don. Marcia, my dear, what about you?
I I really enjoyed the presentation, Arun, and it really got me thinking. But that um, last thing that Don just said about not using your brain, that I think is a sad, because to me, I think of AI as back in the day when we used to have, remember, we used to have administrative assistant.
Hmm.
Every department in IT, you had this person that you could say, hey, I need a letter. I need this. I need that. And you would give them the details like a prompt. This is what I need. And then they would come back to you. And then, and it would be this polished version. So to me, when I'm using the AI, I think along those lines. I don't want it to do all the work for me. I just want it to make whatever I'm doing better and do it faster. And so we have to look at it as a tool to do that, not a tool to replace us thinking.
Oh, well said. I agree with both of you, but that's see, the part of the problem also is that, the universities are still teaching the same old crap, right? They charge all this amount of money and they're not modifying the curriculum to teach people how to adapt to the new things that are coming and what new skills they need. Like, for example, negotiation and it is said, or, better community. I think universities need to really do a pivot and get students prepared. Now, of course, we know that all people can't afford to go to university, and that's fine. But therefore, it's even more important for companies to educate their workforce. I think was it Dan that was saying training and awareness. It's important because it's otherwise it's like for me, for example, right? Okay, if I won the lottery and say I always dreamt of owning a Lamborghini, okay, I'll go and get a Lamborghini. But if I'm not able to drive it, I didn't receive training on how driving a race car, what the hell is use, right? AI is similarly like that. It's an expensive, shiny tool, but if you don't train the employees to use this tool in the proper way, then you're not really leveraging it, right? But the thing is, remembering one thing, that AI is not just a tool. AI is supposed to be a force multiplier. And if you don't train the employees properly, you'll get dampened force, if that makes any kind of sense. Yeah, Marcia.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, Will was just saying that there was a course in for the students in Plymouth Canton now for how to use AI effectively, because they know they're going to use AI, but they want them to tell them what they can and cannot do with it and how they can use it as a tool for the
Yeah.
students.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I know I've been teaching at Lawrence Tech for a couple of months now, and they just came on AI policy. I've not read it yet. I got to read it and see what's in it, just so I know for one thing. Yeah, well, and then Daryl, Randall, what about you? Anything?
Hey, how you doing?
Good, good, my friend. Good to see you.
Uh, to piggyback, well, me personally, I've used AI as kind of like Microsoft named theirs Copilot. Uh,
Hmm.
I've used it as to like refine what I'm working on and also learn new things. Like you said, going to a university, outdated material. Just today, I love using Notebook LLM. It's one of my favorite tools. I build curriculum and design things with some of these AI tools, and I've learned from them. So it's not been a hindrance when I'm not using my brain. The other thing, what I got from this today is definitely as a leader trying to convey, AI security issues to the board. So I've gotten pushback about, using fear tactics where just want to show the business risks. So, trying to learn about that, I enjoyed that topic as well. Thank you.
All right, thanks for coming. Okay, well, so I go to my next screen now. Jobar, you're the student, I think, right? Are you still on? Any thoughts? Okay, what about William Bowen? Anything?
Not tonight.
Okay, next time. And David Seaton, what about you? Not. Okay, and Srimant? Okay, that's okay. Okay, I think that's the official roundtable, closing roundtable. Once again, thanks everyone really for coming, and I enjoyed for being some content to engage with you. And we missed Mike today, but maybe we'll engage with Mike another day, right? So I
Yep,
think we
yep.
can say goodbye to the team, and maybe the board members can stay on for a minute, those that are in attendance.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you,
All right.
everyone.
Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
Take care.
Cheers.
Thank you.